I'm really excited because today I'm joined by someone who I first met 7 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago. He's an award-winning coach. He's been on Sky and the BBC and Forbes. He's worked in companies, speaking and coaching companies like Virgin and Barclays, Microsoft and Salesforce. And I've just heard that Penguin Random House have agreed to publish his next book, which is, or his first book, I think. So I'm really pleased to welcome Simon Ong. Great to have you with us, Simon.
Jamie, thank you so much for having me on this show of yours.
Oh, it's really great to have you here. And the place I like to start with everyone is to ask, what first sparked your interest in the principles behind clarity and the whole domain of how people tick?
Sure. So I made the transition from, I was in a full-time job in the corporate world, in the financial industry, and I started to decide I wanted to change my career. I wanted to move into do something more fulfilling. And so in 2012, I enrolled on a coaching qualification. I qualified with this institution within 2 years. And following that, I started to go searching to understand more about myself, to understand more about how I can begin this journey by creating a powerful platform to grow from. And then I came across your book, Jamie, Clarity, and that really was how I got introduced to the principles, how I got introduced to the thinking behind clarity. And once I finished that book, I thought, you know, I'm really curious to want to explore this deeper. And that's what led me to enroll on one of your programs. I believe it was the first one you put together, Jamie, if memory serves me right.
It was the very first certification training I ever ran, the very first Clarity Coach training. So it would have been like 2013, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's really where it began. And it was, the timing couldn't have been perfect because, as I said, this was at the beginning of my transition. It was the beginning of my journey into doing what I now do today, that I get the privilege to do today. And it's what a roller coaster ride it has been since that moment.
Well, what's it been like? Because I remember, Simon, last time you and I saw each other in person, I remember Arianna Huffington. She had released her book Thrive, and she was doing a talk in central London, I think at like BAFTA or something.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? That's where the smart money is. I'm going to go to that talk. So I got suited and booted, went down to that talk. I went to that conference hall. Arianna Huffington is on stage along with 300 or 400 women in the audience. And me and you were the only two guys in the whole place. And I thought, this man is thinking along similar lines to me. And the thing I wondered about is, that struck me as an example of you just following your intuition about the next step and where to go and what to do. So I'm curious, what's the journey that you've been on since you and I first crossed paths?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think when I first started and as I began your program, Jamie, a lot of my thinking was driven by the external, if you will. It was, you're looking at strategies. It was looking at what I had to achieve. I guess the traditional sense of goal setting dominated my mind and my focus. But as I got deeper into the understanding of the principles behind clarity, it really changed the way I saw myself and therefore my own world. I realized that within each and every one of us, we have this innate wisdom, we have this innate power inside of us, but few of us really get to tap into that, because that is clouded by all of this judgment, this thinking, this overthinking, and we often forget who we really are. And sort of an anecdote comes to my mind is that, as anecdotal as it is, there is some truth to the stories about how Isaac Newton found gravity sitting under a tree thinking about nothing, and then suddenly the apple falls on his head and eureka, he has got this idea for gravity. How Archimedes came up with displacement theory by just lying in a bath, and that sort of insight coming to him. Or James Dyson locking himself up in a room and sketching out all of these ideas for inventions, and he has the next breakthrough for the Dyson product. And so what I realized is that actually there is wisdom within each and every one of us, and it was taking the time to slow down in order to connect to that wisdom, which I feel, looking back now, really served me well. And also realizing that, I believe one of the quotes you shared, Jamie, which I think really resonated with me at the time, was, we live in the feeling of our thinking. Moment to moment to moment, we live in the feeling of our thinking. And for me, the way I interpreted that was, if that is true, that we live in the feeling of our thinking, then we actually have a superpower that we don't appreciate, which is that at any given moment, we have the power to choose one thought over another. At any given moment, we can choose a different thought. And that ability to choose a different thought can literally change the way we see our perspective and our reality. Literally, the way we see our reality and our perception of reality can shift. And for me, that was when I started to be bolder, braver, more courageous in going out there, not being held back by limitation or expectation, or what will other people think? What if it doesn't work out? All of that sort of thinking just started to fall away.
What are some of your examples of that, Simon? Because I know for a lot, see, here's the thing. It's really easy when I introduce someone, I'm like, Simon is, award-winning coach, and he speaks at these big companies, and he's got a book deal. It's easy for people to go, oh, well, that's okay for Simon, because Simon, I just heard Simon's an award-winning coach, and he speaks at all these companies, and he's got a book deal. But my case is different, because I don't have all that stuff going for me. But I know that you were in the same boat that I was in, as the same boat as a lot of people are listening. You were working in the corporate world. You had a sense of a direction you wanted to go in. But my guess is that you were faced with a lot of the same, challenges and maybe self-doubts and that sort of thing. So what are some of the ways that your appreciation for kind of the power of thought and your ability to move in a certain direction, what are some of the ways that those things shifted for you?
Sure, and I totally agree with what you said there, Jamie. It's easy for someone on the outside to see the reward at the end, or a sort of the combination of a number of years. But we often forget that every one of us, no matter where we are at, all began life as a beginner. We were all an amateur once. And whenever I reflect back on that journey, I had a lot of challenges. I'm not going to lie. At the beginning, I think one of the biggest challenges I had, which many coaches do, many consultants do, many change makers do at the beginning of this sort of journey, is, how do I get clients? That is the number one challenge that we all face at the beginning of this kind of journey. So that was my biggest challenge at the beginning. And I guess the outside in thinking for me at the time was, what strategies do I need to employ? If only I did this more, how can I be more like this person to get more clients? And what I started to realize is that I can't get more clients just by trying all these different strategies, because it may have worked for them, but they're coming from a very different place to me. Their reality might be very different. Their background, their experiences, their life upbringing, they may have very different factors that have influenced that particular style of what it worked for them. And so I decided to just focus on being present, to treat, not that I wanted lots of clients, but at the beginning, just treat the only client you have as the one in front of you, and just connect with the individual sitting in front of you, and just be vulnerable, just open up, go with trusting yourself, trusting that you'll have what it takes, you have the insight that will come in the moment. When you're with that client or potential client, if you just focus in that moment and not be attached to anything else. And I think that's what I came from. I came from a place of being attached always to an outcome. When this happens, then this, or only when I get this, then I'll feel this. And what I started to realize is that very often in life, we don't get outcomes, or we don't get our goals, but we suffer in the process, because we're living for the future that may or may not happen. But, a saying I came across, I can't remember who said it, but there's a saying that goes, be attached to no outcome and open to everything. And you can only really experience that when you are trusting yourself and you're present in the moment and you're allowing for that depth of connection. That's how we can become open to everything. And by being attached to an outcome, we we're not in the future, we're not in the past, we're just in this moment now. And I think when I started to serve people in that way, I was able to give people a gift that so few of us get to appreciate, or so few of us get to experience. It's that feeling of being truly deeply listened to.
Yeah, here. Like there's so much in what you just said, Simon. The thing you said about, as soon as you said you started to focus on serving the client who's right in front of you. That to me, that so often people are looking for, where can I get to and what can I do and that sort of thing, rather than seeing actually that just that thing of being with the person in front of you, really, really listening to them, finding out about their world and what matters to them and that sort of thing. It's so precious, and so few people, especially in this world of, social media and all this kind of stuff, so few people really have the experience of being listened to. So it really, I as you know, I kind of bang a drum for that, but it's so great to hear that you put that into practice, that you saw that for yourself, and it started, and it is bearing fruit for you. So then what happened? What started to happen as you kind of continued to work in that way?
Yeah, totally. So as I started serving in this way, I realized that more people I was working with were saying, you should chat to my friend, or you should chat to my ex-colleague, or you should chat to my friend over in this country, because I feel they can really benefit from, even if they just have a conversation, a powerful conversation with you, and nothing else happens. I think that could do so much for them with where they are right now. And so I just followed my curiosity. I didn't sort of judge it. I didn't sort of overthink it. I just sort of said, maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know yet, but I'm just following what's feeling right now. And so I had more of these conversations. And then I was fortunate. One of these clients I ended up working with worked at Barclays. And she really enjoyed the sessions, the meetings we had. And this is how the speaking thing started to come about. And she said to me, Simon, I've really enjoyed our meetings, and I'm in touch with the committee that runs some of these speaking events at the beginning of each year. And I'd love to put you in touch with them. Even if nothing comes of it, maybe it's worth just having a chat and seeing if there's a potential partnership. And I said, sure, why not? I'm happy to have a conversation, open some dialogue. And if it resonates, and if there's a potential way that we can work together, I'm open to explore it. And that was one of my first public speaking events, where I got the opportunity to speak at Barclays over in Canary Wharf. And that was an incredible experience, to be able to take the learnings that I've applied in sort of a private basis and to open it up more in a public domain was beautiful. And it showed me what else could be possible.
Oh, and then, so what happened then? Because it sounds like that was an incredible experience for you. And it sounds like that kind of kicked off the speaking and the corporate speaking gigs.
Yeah.
So what happened?
It was another great example, Jamie, of sort of these principles in action. So this was my first public speaking event. But now when I mean first public speaking event, I mean in the sense that there was no one I knew in the audience.
Right.
I had done some speaking before, and there was my girlfriend at the time, or there was my friends in the audience for moral support. And that was great. But now this was no one in the audience I knew. So I'm walking into this room of about 30, 35 executives in their suits and their ties. And I remember clearly what happened. So the talk was scheduled to start at 7:30 in the evening. And because it was my first one, I was preparing. I was making sure I got my notes on what I wanted to cover. The most important issue for me at the time was the technology. Would the technology work? And so I get there early. I set it up. And it gets to 7:15, and I'm like, great, the technology is working. The projector's on. I'm just going to go for a toilet break and then come back. I'm ready to rock and roll. And so I get to the front, and it's 5 minutes before this event's about to start. And I look at my notes on my laptop, and I realize, hang on a minute, I brought the wrong set of notes with me.
Oh my God.
So I left the actual notes that I've prepared days for at home, and in my rush to get out and get into the office on time, I took the wrong set of notes. And my heart started bumping, sort of really beating fast. And I thought, well, this is one of those fight or flight moments. Do I continue with this talk, which was less of a sort of a TED Talk style of 20 minutes, but more of a 90-minute sort of talk with a gap in between, or do I just go for it? And that, for me, if I'm honest, was amazing training. It's equivalent of jumping in the deep end before you've learned how to swim. And for that 90 minutes, I simply had to trust in myself, trust that I had what it would take to connect with these people in the audience. And it taught me a lesson after that if I can do that, and I can do it in the way I did, bring on the next challenge. And the confidence I was gained from that was incredible.
I love it. And it's often, I don't know if you've found this, Simon, but I've often found that it's the very things that we might think are the worst thing that could happen or that sort of thing that actually end up looking like the fuel in the rocket, like and after all, you'd been preparing for days, regardless of whether you had the notes or not. And just, it seems, and I bet this is not the first time you've told that story either, because it's a brilliant story. So it's like everything becomes grist for the mill. Everything becomes juice. I love it. I love it.
It's like this, this saying I shared in a recent talk I did, is that often the hardest times in our life become the very thing that provides us with the wisdom, the insight, and the skills to create the best times in our life, because that's where lessons are learned. Without them, well, we wouldn't have the, as you say, the fuel in order to move towards that next stage.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And one of the things I really appreciate about you, Simon, is just, I noticed the way that you're able to take these sometimes kind of complex ideas and stuff, but really simplify them into something that, like what you just said, that sometimes the difficult times in the life become the basis for the best times. You've got a book deal with Random House. How did you approach that? And was part of the appeal for them this ability that you have to simplify and clarify your message?
Yeah, kind of. It's really interesting, Jamie, because as we all do, we have lots of things on our to-do list. There's things we want to do, projects we want to start. And in all honesty, writing a book wasn't one of them. It was one of the things I would like to do, but it wasn't like my top two priorities. So if I rewind back to last summer, I was catching up with a friend, and this friend of mine had already written a book. And similar to what you said, Jamie, you said, Simon, you've got a really good way of, distilling certain ideas and principles and making it sound really simple so that the layman can grasp your idea very quickly. And he said to me, have you thought about putting your ideas into a book? And I said, not really. It's something that's on my mind, but it's not something that is a must right now. It's one of those things that's on my one-day list, but it's not sort of a must right now. And then I attended an event in September to see Marie Forleo. And Marie Forleo is another author that's been published with Penguin Random House. And again, just being present, and I've just sort of been present and being connected, seeing what's going on in the room. And I saw a lot of people were queuing up to get Marie to sign their copy of the book. And this was a small audience of about 60 people. And I was thinking to myself, it'll be great to get an opportunity to speak to Marie. But if I'm queuing in that line, there is no way I'm going to get a chance to speak to her, because I'm just going to end up queuing, get my book signed, and off I go. And so in that moment of being present, I look around the room and I see Marie's team at the back of the room, and no one's talking to Marie's team because everyone's going after Marie.
Right.
So I make a beeline to her team and I just connect with them. I just say, how are you enjoying London? What's it like? How different is London from the United States? And how's it been supporting Marie during her tour of the UK? And we got into a really deep conversation. We connected really well. And Marie simply came over and said, hey, what are you guys chatting about? And that's when I got to ask her about, how was it putting this book together? How did the journey begin? And I really was able to connect with her and learn a lot from that short conversation that she had before she dash off to another sort of media opportunity to share her sort of book. And she mentioned to me, if you're thinking about writing a book, you should definitely have a chat with Penguin Random House. And again, I started to think to myself, the saying that the universe works in mysterious ways, there must be something going on here. I've had a couple of these signs popping up. And then it was November last year, and a publisher reaches out. So not Penguin, but another publisher reaches out and says, Simon, we saw you speak at an event earlier this year, and we'd just like to touch base and have an initial conversation to explore potential of putting a book together. And I said, sure, let's have a conversation. Again, I'm open. I'm not sort of going to close the door to that, but it's always good to keep your options open. And then that thought came in my head that, hang on a minute, Marie mentioned it'll be good to touch base with Penguin. And I started to think, well, if I'm going to do something, why not try and be bold? Why not try and be brave and try and aim for the top? Because even if I don't get it, hey, I've got this publisher that just reached out to me. So what I did is I just started thinking, well, where would these sort of publishing teams hang out? And I just started thinking, well, why don't I try and build a connection with them? And I remember reaching out to one or two of the team and said, it'd be great in the new year to catch up for coffee. I've got some ideas I'd love to share with you. And I thought, I'll never know if I never try. And I just clicked send, put it out there, and thought, I don't expect anything. Similar to what I said earlier, do not be attached to the outcome, but be open to everything. Mm-hmm. And just after Christmas, I got a message back saying, well, if you can do mid-January at this time, we'll be happy to host you at our offices. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Nothing's happened yet, but just the fact that they're open to having a meeting. And so I went there, and things really started to pick up from there, really. We had a fantastic couple of hour conversation, again, really just focused on connection, not attached to any outcome. I wasn't of the mindset that I wanted the book, and I'm rigid on that. I was just thought, if it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll still continue. And that has been one of the mindsets that's helped me through that period. Is I wasn't attached to whether it worked out or not. Fortunately, it did. So, I'm sure it'll be a different story if it didn't, but fortunately it did. And that was really how that journey began. A series of events, if you will, a series of things that sort of started to come together.
Well, there's so much in what you've just said that I'd love to just tease out. So one of the things is that, it's funny, Simon, there's a book that I love called Strategic Intuition. And the author, William Duggan, he's looked at many successful people, companies, all from all kinds of different fields. And he says the broad process that he sees them follow is prepare for opportunity, notice it when it shows up, and act on it. And I hear that in everything that you're saying again and again. So you're preparing for opportunity, noticing when the opportunities show up, and acting on it, not being necessarily attached to outcome or anything, but just acting on it. And the other kind of themes that I hear behind that in what you're saying is about connecting with people, connecting, listening, being part of what's going on, acting with boldness. And you also reminded me of something I heard years ago, which I just loved. I can't remember who said it. It was either I was one of those old guys like Zig Ziglar, or maybe Bob Proctor, someone like that. Said, if you don't know what to do in a situation, look at what everyone else is doing. Do the opposite of that. And I hear that with seeing everyone queuing up to go see Marie Forleo and going and doing the opposite and going, but then connecting with them and hanging out with them and having a real connection with them and seeing what comes from that. It's very cool.
I think that love of connecting with people, it's a basis of all businesses, right? I mean, I think in today's, as you've noted earlier, Jamie, in today's sort of social media landscape, attention spans are shorter. We tend to look for the shortcuts, and we try and bypass the fact that actually, unless we're coming from a place of connection, unless we're coming from a place of serving, you can't expect things to land on your plate straight away. And it's just having that mindset to be open to not be attached to things. The old me would have looked at it and go, after my third or fourth try, why should I bother? It's not working out. I should give up. But the new me sort of says, great, it didn't work out. How can I come back differently? What is it teaching me? What is the insight here? What is the lesson? And so it's always about, I guess the sort of image coming in my head in martial arts terminology is all about remaining or sort of maintaining that white belt mentality, that beginner mindset. And it's something I saw on social media the other day that says the difference between a student and a master is the student is obsessed by being a master, that part being the outcome, whereas the master is focused or has cultivated the focus of being an eternal student.
Yeah, I love it.
And that's what I started to embrace, and with Marie Forleo, but also with when I connect with people on social media, a lot of people that I felt in my experience just send out mass connections. For me, whenever someone sends me a connection request on LinkedIn or I connect with someone new, I love sending them voice notes. I love sending voice messages. And again, it's one of those things that most people kind of just send a text message, but I like to send a voice note, which only takes 8 seconds, maximum 8 seconds to send a nice voice note. And people will feel and sense more of who you are in that 8-second voice note than a text message where you can't really gauge the emotion behind the text.
It makes total sense to me. It makes total sense to me. And the other thing that occurs to me with that is it's authentic and coming from you. So people will pick that up. So it would be easy for someone watching or listening to this to go, oh yeah, that must be the way I should send voice notes. For someone else, it might be, you know what, I'll send a video message. Or for someone else, it might be, I'll write a letter or whatever. It's about doing what makes sense to you, which I just love. Are you a martial artist yourself, Simon?
I used to be. So I grew up very stereotypically Chinese. So I grew up learning karate until I was a teenager. Had a break, and then when I was at university, I did taekwondo. And then when I was at university, did Wing Chun. Finished by learning Jeet Kune Do. And I think Jeet Kune Do was a great martial art to learn because it was also very philosophical. And I think there's a lot of what Bruce Lee talks about, because Bruce Lee was also very much into philosophy. A lot of Bruce Lee, what he talked about at the time, there's a lot of overlap with what we speak about in the principles.
Yeah.
With the way he approached martial arts. You know, I remember there was an interview when Bruce Lee was asked, did you design Jeet Kune Do because you think that is the martial art we should all learn? Is that the martial art we should embrace? And I think Bruce Lee's response told a lot about his understanding. He simply replied saying, no, I designed Jeet Kune Do for myself. You know, there's so many different martial arts you can learn: karate, Western boxing, taekwondo, judo, aikido. But for me, I didn't feel I connected with a particular martial art solely, but I loved the way that I could blend certain martial arts with each other. So I could blend a bit of boxing with judo. I could blend a bit of kung fu with taekwondo. And thereby I created this martial art, which was meant for me, called Jeet Kune Do. I just found that people were interested to learn about it. And that led him to formulate this statement that he had on the necklace he had in his final few years. On the back was inscribed, use no limit as limit, use no way as way.
I love it. There's Bruce Lee. There's so many examples where he just kind of nailed it in terms of his, like you said, the philosophy of it. Funnily enough, at the beginning of this year, I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it was the first time since learning the principles that I started a new martial art. And like you've described, the whole kind of, because I'm so terrible at it, it gave me the opportunity to just show up and hit the mats and just be in the process of learning. And it's so much more fun than being attached to the idea of I've got to be a black belt or I've got to be like this. It makes it so much more enjoyable and just kind of trusting the process.
So I mean, go on, Jamie.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that for me was a huge game changer when I started to realize it was never about there. It was never about getting there. Because one of the insights and realizations I had is, you know, I love my analogies. So when I look at successful individuals, I look at sports teams or sports stars. What I realize is that when we attach ourselves to this concept of there, well, what happens when, let's say you do get there, what happens next?
Yeah.
And what tends to happen is we enter a period of complacency. You know, it's why it's very easy for a sports star or a sports team to win that first trophy, but it's a lot harder to attain it again and again and again because now we're there. We kind of slip back into where we were at the beginning. Whereas realizing that success or whatever you're chasing, you already have what it takes to get it. It's just about how are you showing up every day? How are you showing up and serving? And if you are showing up and serving in a way that has impact on someone else, then that is building success into your lifestyle. It is really a lifestyle, less a destination. It's just about living that truth.
I really love that, because what you're speaking to, for me anyway, Simon, is that success isn't a destination. It's a means of travel. It's funny. There's the person who first articulated the principles behind clarity is Sydney Banks, and he was asked his definition of success. He said, happiness and contentment. And to me, there's something about coming from a place of happiness and contentment that actually means you can be bold and go for those big moves, because your happiness and well-being isn't dependent on it. It's like you've got nothing to lose. It's really cool to kind of see it. Brings us back to the non-attachment piece. And I know that Baby Ong has shown up quite recently. How are you finding the ultimate challenge of being a new dad?
It's been an incredible experience, Jamie, especially given we gave birth to little Sienna during this global pandemic. She was born early April, which was literally just a few days after lockdown was formally initiated here in the UK. So it was a very surreal experience, because we had initially planned for parents, both on my wife's side and my side, to come over to help in the first few weeks and months. Sure. But given what happened, none of them could fly over. So it was my wife and I and little Sienna. And I think one of the, something another friend of mine shared, who's also a parent, said, Simon, trust in your intuition, trust in your parental instinct, because what you will feel, what will come to you, it will be specific to your child. Every child is different, but you will feel certain things, and you just follow that intuition that you have. And I think that served me so well. I think going through and understanding these principles, going through what I've gone through in my own development in the last sort of 6+ years has been a fantastic foundation to have prepared me for parenthood.
Yeah, that's so cool. Simon, it's been great to have you with us today. Where can people find out more about you if they want to connect with you, or if they want to kind of read about your work and your book and that sort of thing?
Sure. So they can connect with me by visiting my website at www.simonalexanderong.com. And if you're also on social media, I'm pretty much on all the channels, mainly YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. And I know people have really enjoyed it. Liz just said, super conversation, inspiring. Good luck with the book, Simon. It's great to see you, man. And I look forward to connecting with you in person when the lockdown's all finished.
Likewise, Jamie. And thank you very much again for having me on this fantastic show of yours.
Oh, huge pleasure. You take care and good luck with everything. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.